When I opened it, guess what I found? My mother-in-law's voice was sharp, almost triumphant. I froze. Could she have discovered the truth? My heart raced as her words echoed in my mind. You think you can deceive me? She added mockingly. My name is Charlotte. I met my husband by chance at work. I'm a consultant, and sometimes I give talks about my work. I don't do them on a large scale, but one of the attendees was my future husband. The theme of the lecture at that time was what it means to make money. Many of the attendees were self-employed or CEOs, but he was just an ordinary office worker. I had the impression that he listened to the lecture very seriously. Even after the seminar was over, he came to me with his own questions and thanked me directly by email, which made me feel that he was very interested in what I had to say. On the other hand, I also had the impression that he was somewhat unreliable. When he participated in the workshop, he made a subtle comment along the lines of, I did my best to pay for the workshop. My workshops are like a side job to me, so the participation fee is not that high. But I won't lie, I was happy to hear that. After that, he often participated in my workshops, and I think our feelings grew closer as we interacted. Finally, he confessed his feelings to me. However, I was aware that there was a significant difference in our financial abilities. I've reached a point in my career where I'm not worried about money, and he has only the title of an ordinary employee. I think it's normal for people to think that I'm not a good match for him, but I've been with a few men while doing this job, and most of them have been financially capable, though a little over the top. In my opinion, even though I have a job like this, I know deep down that money is not everything, so I accepted the relationship with him. Later, we started talking about marriage, and Julian proposed to me, but even then, I could not accept Julian's proposal right away because he didn't spend much money on our dates. I don't know how to say this, but I really don't think he has any money to spend on dates. He also told me that he wanted me to live with his mother when we got married, which was another complication for me. When I asked him why he wanted me to move in with her, he was very clear. My dad passed away, and my mom is not strong enough to work. I've managed to make ends meet on my salary, but it's been tough. That's why I need your help with living expenses. I knew that, in this situation, the only thing that came to mind was the unreliability I felt at first, but in the end, I accepted his proposal because I knew he was sincere. I think I paid more for the dates than he did, but I didn't stop going out with him. Even in that situation, he still made plans for our dates and prepared gifts for my birthday and other occasions. I felt that he was easier to date than the men I had dated in the past, who had a strange sense of pride because I was the one who earned the money when they had financial problems. With this in mind, I agreed to live with him at his parents' house and help with living expenses, and we decided to get married. However, my decision turned out to be a mistake. Before the wedding, I had visited his mother at her old, run-down house, and she seemed to accept me. After the wedding, when I went to greet her again at her home, I thought our life together would go well, but I did not realize at the time that such a tragedy was awaiting us. It was as if they had been living in poverty. I thought it would be difficult for me to continue living in this house, so I talked to them about it. I would pay for it, so can we remodel the house a little bit? I suggested. She was overjoyed, and my mother-in-law immediately agreed. It was a little difficult for me to accept the idea of living together without her approval, so I was glad. I was relieved that I could pay for the remodeling, and the house became a reasonably comfortable place to live. However, as we continued to live together, I gradually began to feel a sense of discomfort. My mother-in-law did not pay her utility bills online but by check. When the bill arrived one day, I found an electric bill in the mailbox and told my mother-in-law about it. "Would you go and pay it for me?" she said. I was confused for a moment when she said that, but I thought she would pay me back, and it was not that much money, so I went to pay it as she asked. However, after that, my mother-in-law and husband never mentioned anything about the electricity bill, and I began to wonder if they were aware that I had paid it. When the water or gas bill came, my mother-in-law would turn to me again. "Could you go and pay them for me?" she kept saying. "That would be great." After that, neither my mother-in-law nor my husband mentioned the money to me. I don't care about the money, but I wish they would say a word about it. We are newlyweds, and I don't want to ruin the mood. Besides, I knew that my husband didn't make much money, so I didn't want to be stingy. I decided to pay the utilities myself, but even after that, I had to cover various expenses in the name of living costs. Sometimes my mother-in-law would tell me, "We ran out of detergent," or, "We only have 2 rolls of toilet paper left," and she would send me to buy them. However, I was always the one paying for them. She never contributed, but I didn't mention it because it wasn't a significant amount of money. As time passed, her requests started to grow. She began saying things like, "This microwave is so old," or, "I've always wondered if this refrigerator is big enough for the three of us. Charlotte, what do you think?" I would reply, "I think it's small too," and then she would say, "Do you think I should buy a new one?" When I agreed that a new one might be a good idea, she responded, "I thought so. Then would you go and buy a new one, Charlotte?" It felt like she had been waiting for my answer. When the expenses started reaching larger amounts, even though I could afford it, I started to reflect. I realized I had been paying for most of our food and other household costs, which made me question what my husband's salary was being used for. It became harder for me to keep up with my mother-in-law's demands, so I decided it was time to discuss the finances. I suggested, "How about having Julian handle buying the new appliances? I don't know much about home appliances." My mother-in-law's expression changed, and she snapped, "How dare you ask for Julian's money? What kind of wife are you? Julian works hard too, so it's not fair to take advantage of his money." I was shocked because she completely ignored the fact that I, too, worked hard. She then added, "You earn a lot, so you should save as well. A wife is supposed to protect the family finances." Her words stung because I had been managing the family budget and saving in my own way without anyone telling me to do so. It angered me that she, who never contributed to our living expenses, felt entitled to lecture me about finances. It even made me wonder what Julian was doing with his salary. I decided to ask Julian about it directly. One day, I boldly asked, "Hey Julian, do you save money? I'm paying for everything around the house, so I assume you've saved quite a bit." His reply stunned me. "How do you expect me to save money? I spend it all on drinks and gambling. Besides, I have my hobbies too. What I do with my hard-earned money is my business," he firmly concluded. I was floored. Not only was he not saving, but he was wasting his money on gambling and hobbies, all while I paid for the household expenses. "So, it turns out I'm paying for everything while your salary goes to gambling and hobbies?" I exclaimed angrily. His expression hardened, and he snapped, "What do you mean by that? You pay my bills so I can gamble. If you want me to make more money, then praise me for working hard." His response felt like a slap in the face. I couldn't believe he thought I should be grateful while he squandered money. My distrust of both Julian and my mother-in-law grew. It had been almost 5 years since we started living together, and I realized I'd been shouldering all the expenses. I felt like I was being taken advantage of and no longer wanted to keep paying for everything. The next day, I decided to speak to my mother-in-law. I told her, "I've been thinking, and I believe we should split the utility and food costs with Julian." I thought I was being reasonable, but she became furious. "Don't you understand what I said before? Besides, you're living in my house. Don't you feel grateful that I'm taking care of you? Since you're living here, it's only natural for you to pay the expenses," she retorted. I wanted to say, "It's true I live here, but I'm the one taking care of you. It was her idea for us to live together," yet she acted like I was imposing on her. I couldn't deny it anymore. I no longer wanted to be part of this family. Then, as if to seal the deal, my mother-in-law asked, "How much money do you have saved right now?" I had a bad feeling about her question. She had been relying on my earnings from the start, and I feared that if I told her the truth, she would try to use it for her own purposes. I replied, "I have about $300,000 in my bank account." Her response was shocking. "If you put it in your bank account, I can't use it. Make sure I can spend that money." I couldn't understand why she was so obsessed with other people's money, but this was like my hunch coming true. "I put some money in the safe so that I wouldn't touch my savings," I said, something like that in the spur of the moment. Then my mother-in-law smiled and said, "Then I'll forgive you for your grievance against me and tell you to behave yourself as a wife from now on. Since I haven't felt at ease since you came, I will take a trip to a resort." With these words, she walked away. I didn't understand what she meant. I couldn't help but wonder if she was thinking of using the money in the safe to go on a trip. But when I woke up the next day, my mother-in-law was already gone, and so was the safe. I seriously doubted my mother-in-law's nerve and asked my husband about her. "Who cares if she goes on a trip? Mom needs to relax once in a while," he said calmly. I couldn't understand this family at all. My mother-in-law was basically stealing money by making me pay all the living expenses because I lived in her home. She and her son would be the ones to suffer the consequences later for what they did. When I came home after work that day, my mother-in-law confronted me in a furious manner. "You lied to me, didn't you? There was no money in the safe." Apparently, she had gone to the airport with the safe. I tried so hard to open the safe, but all I found inside was a bunch of weird junk and useless comic books. I was so pissed off that I threw it all away. "How dare you humiliate me," she continued angrily. My mother-in-law was yelling and ranting as she opened the safe and showed me what was inside. When Julian came home from work, my mother-in-law explained the situation to him, but it wasn't me who he was angry with, it was his own mother. "You seriously threw everything away? You've got to be kidding me," he exclaimed fiercely. I guess my mother-in-law was surprised by Julian's reaction. I think she expected him to blame me, but what she threw away, though it might have been just useless junk to her, was actually the contents of his treasure collection. It was my precious collection, and all of them cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Julian said, his frustration clear. Inside the safe were limited edition comic books and action figures. Collecting them was Julian's hobby, and all of them were bought with his own money. There wasn't a penny of money in it, though. Anyway, Julian was in a state of shock after losing something important. I knew he liked those things, but I didn't know he had kept them in that safe. But I never lied about anything. "There was a little bit in the safe, but I didn't say it was money," I said. But my mother-in-law tried to shift the blame onto me. While Julian was furious with her, she said, "But Charlotte said there was money in the safe." Blame her. She tried to direct his anger toward me. "You wouldn't keep anything important in a safe that you could easily carry around, would you?" I retorted, trying to reason with them. I added, "I think Julian probably put it in there because he didn't want his hobby to be known." As I said this, my mother-in-law finally felt remorse for what she had done. "Julian, I'm sorry," she said, almost kneeling in apology. But, of course, Julian valued his collection as much as his own life. He didn't seem willing to forgive his mother at all. I guess the parent and child, who had been using my money together, ended up having a falling out. At this point, I decided to do what I had been thinking for a while. "I don't want to be with a family that uses my money without my permission anymore," I said firmly. "So, Julian, let's get a divorce." My mother-in-law and Julian tried to stop me, of course. They would, because they'd be poor again when I was gone. "I've already given you a luxurious life for 5 years, and I don't want to be merciful to you anymore. If you won't give me a divorce, I will fight in court. I can get as many lawyers as I want. Please make sure you have a lawyer who can match that," I warned them. But, of course, they didn't have the money to afford such a powerful lawyer. Besides, I would tell them about how they destroyed the safe to go after my money. Even if there was no money, what they did was still a crime. "I know a lot of lawyers, and I will fight for you as much as you want," I bluffed a little. I can actually get a lawyer, but I knew I couldn't make my mother-in-law a criminal. However, that scared them both so much that they decided to grant me a divorce without much of a fight. I took the appliances and other things I had bought at their house and left. With all the major furniture and appliances gone, their house was probably poorer than it had been before I moved in with them. "You will never make any money by taking things that belong to others," is what I explained at my workshop. I said over and over that it would only hurt you sooner or later. Was Julian even listening to anything I said? But I was right. My mother-in-law and Julian are now living in such poverty that it's difficult for them to have a normal life. On the other hand, as for me, I have spent a lot of extra money and time in the past 5 years. But as a consultant, I am glad to have had this realistic experience. If you try dirty tricks like this, nothing good will come to you. I think it was a positive experience for me to be able to use these words more persuasively.